Thank you for joining us for this episode of This is Getting Old, Moving Towards an Age-Friendly World. This 10-part series is sponsored by AARP's Community Challenge Grant and George Washington University's University Seminar Series, and is brought to you by Melissa B., PhD, in collaboration with GW Center for Aging, Health, and Humanities. Welcome to This is Getting Old. I'm your host, Melissa Batchelor, and today I'll be sharing a recent initiative that I've been working on with some colleagues called the AARP Age-Friendly Social Innovation Challenge. This is a 10-part special series, and today we're going to be talking about Part 5, which is Emergency Preparedness and Resilience. So this series is based on several regional events that we've held at the George Washington University Center for Aging, Health, and Humanities with our 5 regional age-friendly municipalities and our multiple partners. So if you missed the overview of the Social Innovation Challenge, please check out Part 1, which is episode 89, if you're looking for it on my website, melissabphd.com, or you can find it on my YouTube channel. But in a nutshell, the morning sessions were spent learning about design thinking, and then participants were paired up by their domain of interest. And these domains are reflective of the World Health Organization and AARP's framework for age-friendly cities and communities. So as I said earlier, this episode is focused on emergency preparedness and resilience. And please stay tuned to the end of the episode to hear about some different resources that may be helpful to you and your family. So the concept of emergency preparedness and resilience generally means the ability of any community to respond to an emergency that impacts all residents. So anything like a natural disaster could range from a hurricane, a tornado, a blizzard, but anything that requires us to shelter in place or displaces us. So how communities handle emergencies can either be integrated oriented or segregated oriented. But if it's an age-friendly city, in our opinion, it should be integrated oriented to include all populations. Except that we've seen historically in Florida, our nursing homes sometimes need help getting their plans together. And we've saw it with Hurricane Katrina. So while being integrated oriented is important, there are certain populations that we may also need to consider. But either way, during an emergency situation, any resident with mobility problems, chronic health conditions, anyone that has a hearing, vision, or cognitive impairment, they're going to need to be prepared for an emergency situation by creating a plan, reviewing, and maybe even practicing it, and keeping an emergency supply kit, just because they're more vulnerable. So it's clear to see that there are many, many things related to emergency preparedness and resilience for older adults. And in order to focus the group's thinking and problem solving, a scenario was designed by the design thinking team. From there, the group devised different ideas for a way to solve the problem, and then they chose one to develop an innovative solution for. The participants included university students from the DC metropolitan area, older adults, and local leaders who live in the region and work in the age-friendly space. Groups were free to come up with ideas based on what they felt like was the biggest priority for the subject of their scenario. And then they were instructed to think about solutions without concern for practicality, financing, or what policies would need to change in order to actually make their solution a reality. Now, as you listen, you may have an idea for a solution, or you may know of a program that would help older adults and their families facing a similar challenge. I hope that you'll add your comments below this video, and because I'd love to hear from you. So now let's tune in to hear what the scenario provided to this group was and what solution they came up with.
So the problem presented was that Earl, who was 71 years young, retired, living in Arlington, had moved here 12 years ago after losing his wife in a hurricane flood. And he now lives alone, but he has good friends in Crystal City nearby. He can get around, he walks, he takes the bus, but it's been raining a lot, and this week his home was flooded. His electricity went out and he has no running water. He feels like he should know what to do, but help seems far away. So the problem that we identified was that Earl didn't know what resources and supports were available to him locally. More immediately, he needs to resolve the flooding in his home and possibly find temporary housing. So we felt we needed to connect him with long-term systems of support, and they may go beyond just a need for cleaning up his home and getting him temporary housing, because we don't know his whole situation. we need to connect him with immediate resources and support, but also long-term system of support. So to help him prevent these problems in the future, before they happen or as they happen. And we recognize that Earl is probably not alone, and he probably has many other people in his community who are in similar positions with their own unique needs. So we talked about, and this is what I heard a lot of reporting out this morning from other groups, a localized community-specific emergency system infrastructure should be developed that is flexible and comprised of first responders, volunteers, liaisons, the aging network, first community network, advisory councils for older adults, or made up of older adults. And the system could be used to be both proactive, to identify people who are most vulnerable before they have an emergency, to create an emergency contact network in the community to run through drill scenarios and prepare for emergencies, to meet immediate needs of the individuals during emergencies, to conduct follow-up post-emergencies, connecting individuals with systems and support for wider community beyond their immediate needs during the time of the crisis, and to conduct follow-up surveys to determine whether these targeted individuals and beneficiaries received the appropriate support and information they needed. There was a great sense of community, a need to have ambassadors and members of the community participate in building these systems, in planning the systems, in building the system, conducting any outreach that was needed, and ensuring the well-being of their friends and neighbors. There was also a lot of discussion about the village movement and other similar kinds of community organizations that are grassroots volunteer networks that have been built up around the region to help people in need. And this is a model that hopefully could be expanded upon. So that was basically it was a very creative and innovative discussion. And I think the main thing was to help people be prepared before they have an emergency, help them through their emergency, know where they are, identify populations who might be at higher risk than others, and to ensure that whatever we do is actually useful and successful.
So I would like to thank all the participants in this group for their time, effort, and energy. And one of the themes that many people that keeps coming out in these episodes is that we feel like a lot of people don't know what resources and services are actually available in any given community. So that's been a common thread. So I do encourage you to check out your local area agency on aging, or call the Elder Care Locator, which is a national organization, at 1-800-677-1116. And a specially trained operator can refer you to the local agency that can help you, and really advise you to do this before you have an emergency, which is what the group also said. And as I mentioned earlier, I also want to share some information with you that may help you avoid problems during an emergency. So ready.gov is a list of basic items that you need to have in a disaster supply kit. So I advise you to go to that website and look to see what they have on that list. Some of the things probably include having at least a 3-day supply of your medications, having extra batteries for your hearing aids, and any information about medical devices, including like a wheelchair, walker, or even an oxygen machine. And then the CDC has a document called the Complete Care Plan, which is linked below this video and on my website with this episode. And that will give you a guide of all the different important documents that you need to keep in a waterproof bag that you should probably also take photos of to have as a backup, just so that you can access those things if you end up in an emergency situation. So you may have another idea for a solution or know of a program that would help older adults and their families facing similar challenges. So please add your comments below this video, or you can add them on my website where this episode is found at melissabphd.com, because we'd love to hear from you. What we have found through these episodes is that the more we share, the more we learn from each other. And actually this program in a similar fashion existed in Hyattsville, Maryland. And after the age-friendly city of Arlington learned about it, they actually replicated this program. So many of these things can be replicated. So get in touch with us, or at least get in touch with me, and I'll put you in touch with them. if it's something that you would like to get more information on. Thank you for joining us for this episode of This is Getting Old, Moving Towards an Age-Friendly World. This 10-part series is sponsored by AARP's Community Challenge Grant and George Washington University's University Seminar Series, and is brought to you by Melissa B., PhD, in collaboration with GW Center for Aging, Health, and Humanities.